Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Rob. I'm an English teacher here to try and provide you with regular short videos to improve your English skills. So for today's video, I want to tackle the tense structures, the most common tense structures that you find in the English language. To keep the video accessible and not too long, we're just going to focus on the form, the structure of each of these tenses. And I'll just give you the most common tenses, the tenses I think are most important if you're learning English. There are some others which are more advanced, so it's not completely exhaustive, but it's the ones that I think are most important for you to learn if you're learning English as a foreign language. So each individual tense has several contexts where it can be used. Today we'll focus on the most common, and there'll be future videos to analyze the difference between each individual tense, or you can always contact us on the details below to organize lessons to explore this further if you really want to master these skills. So before we start, if you're looking for a specific tense to make it easier for you, here you can find the times. You can jump to this time in the video and you'll see the specific tense that you're looking for explained. Okay, just to try and save you some time, you don't need to scan through the video, you can click exactly here on some of these points. Okay, that's the introduction done. Now let's get down to business. Let's look at these tenses. So to clarify the structure, each time I'll provide you an example sentence here. Okay, each time we'll look at the affirmative, the negative, and the question form. I'll give you a timeline with the most common use, and I'll give you the key words that are most commonly used when you use these tenses. These are the very important words that when you use this word, you then need to use this tense. These words are the key to helping you choose the correct tense. They're very important. So first up, first tense, I hope you've heard of it before. It's the present simple. So our example for the present simple, I always wake up at 6 a.m. Okay, that's the affirmative. The negative for this, so I don't always wake up at 6 a.m. And then the question structure, do you always wake up at 6 a.m? Now the timeline here for the context is something which happens in general. It's generally true, so we use this for routines or habits. And the key words that you need for this, always, often, sometimes, never. Okay, these are just some examples. You have lots, but this is just to give you an idea, the most common use. These are the key words you need. Okay, we can't talk about the present simple without discussing the third person, because this is where a common mistake happens. So if we change I for he, then we have to add an S to the verb. He always wakes up at 6 a.m. For the negative, we need to change again for the third person, so he, she, or it. So let's use she this time. She doesn't always wake up at 6 a.m. And finally the question, does he or she always wake up at 6 a.m? Okay, that's the present simple out of the way. Let's move on. The second tense, present continuous. So your example sentence for the present continuous is, I am working at home today. So present continuous negative, you just add not. I am not working. And the question, are you working? So first the context, the timeline. This is when we're focusing on something very specifically now. So in contrast to the present simple, where it's a routine or habit, in this context, it's something very specifically true now, at the moment. Now then, key words that you need for this, now, at the moment, currently, today. A time period which is very specifically focused on now. As I said at the introduction to this video, there are several contexts where we use all of these constructions, but this is the most common one. This is an introduction for form. Third up, another present tense for you, the last present tense. This is the present perfect. I have worked at this company for 5 years. Okay, present perfect, to make it negative, you make the have negative, the auxiliary verb. So I haven't worked. And the question form is with have you worked? Okay, no do here when you make the question. You use have instead of do. And you conjugate the verb instead of using the infinitive. Here the verb to work, it's a regular verb, so we just add the ed. If we use an irregular verb, for example, the verb to take, we would use the past participle form and it would be I have taken, for example. With our timeline, we can see this is an action which began in the past and continued to the present. It's not finished. This is complicated and there are many different examples where it's difficult to identify what's not finished. In this example here, we still work. The verb isn't finished. But as I said, in a future video, we'll explain in more detail all the different possibilities with this. But the main thing you know, present perfect means there's a link from the past to the present. Keywords that we use often with the present perfect: already, yet, for, or since, related to a time point in the past, connecting something from the past to the present. This week, this month, a time period which isn't finished. So we've seen the present tenses. Now let's move on to the past tenses. So the first one, it's the past simple. The example: I started a new job yesterday. So the past simple, in the affirmative, you take the infinitive and you add ed for regular verbs. For an irregular verb, for example, the verb to go, it would be I went. This is your irregular verb list that you have to learn, all of the irregular verbs by heart, unfortunately, and you have a lot in English. I know it's not easy, but it'd be I went shopping yesterday. Okay, because the verb to go, it's irregular. The negative form: I didn't start a new job yesterday. And the question, did you start a new job yesterday? With our irregular example, I went shopping yesterday. The negative here, now be careful, it's I didn't go shopping yesterday. Very common mistake, it's I didn't went. Be careful, you only conjugate the verb in the affirmative with the past simple. The timeline: this is an action which happened in the past with a finished time period and a finished action. The key words that you need with this are finished time periods. So yesterday, last week, last month, last year, or 2 weeks ago, 5 years ago. These finished time references where there's no link to the present. Next up, past continuous. So for the construction, it's similar to the present continuous, but you use the past with the verb to be. The example for you: I was speaking to John when you called me. And this is often used in conjunction with another verb in the past simple. Here you have called me. This is your verb in the past simple. And the negative form, again, you just add not. So I was not speaking with John. And the question form, because we have the verb to be, we need to conjugate the verb to be and we keep the ing form the same. So were you speaking with John, etc. So as you can see from our timeline, here there's one action which was continuous, which was then interrupted by the second action in the past simple. So we use this continuous form here to say that there was an ongoing action which was then interrupted. The key words that you need when you use this: when and while, are very often used with the past continuous. Then we have the past perfect. I had already left when John arrived. The negative then for the past perfect, so you make the auxiliary had negative. So I hadn't left, and the question, had you left? That's the past perfect for you. As you can see on the timeline, again here we have two actions, and one action happened before the other action. Both actions are in the past. So here it's like the past of the past. Okay, that sometimes confuses people more than it helps them. But yes, as you can see, you have two actions, action 1 and action 2. Action 1 happened first and action 2 happened second. But in order to distinguish between when these two actions happened, to show some chronological order, you have to use a different tense. Because if you used the same tense, we would think it happened at the same time, but it didn't. So it's to clarify the difference. The key word, the most common with the past perfect, is the word already. to distinguish, to specify that one thing happened before another. Okay, or before is perhaps also common. Another construction that we use to talk about the past is the used to construction. For example, I used to work in a bank. And then with used to make a negative or a question, it's the same idea as the past simple. So the negative of used to is I didn't used to work in a bank. And the question, did you used to work in a bank? Now we use this construction as per the timeline to say something that happened repeatedly, many times, or for a long period of time in the past, which is now stopped. It's now finished. So by saying I used to work in a bank, we now understand clearly that it's not true anymore. The key phrases or words you'd use with this are often when I was younger or in my childhood. Okay? Or it's not even necessary really to use a keyword with this because the used to carries a lot of information itself. We know it was something in the past that stopped now. We don't necessarily need to know when. Okay, let's move on to the future now to finish. So you have a few different ways of speaking about the future in English, but I'll speak about the two most common now and show you the main difference. Again, a future video will have to explain all the different nuances. So the future, the first example, I'm going to Spain on holiday. To make it negative, similar to the present continuous, you just insert not. So I'm not going to Spain on holiday. And the question, are you going to Spain on holiday? Okay, now the going to future, most commonly it's used to describe plans. So this means that you made the decision in the past. So as you can see on our timeline, a decision in the past about the future is a plan, and in this context you need to use going to. Keywords that we use with this are next week, next month, a future reference. Okay? Any future reference you can use with this. Now alternatively, I'm sure you know we have another future, which is the will future. To give you an example of how this is commonly used in contrast to going to, we would say, maybe in a conversation, person A says, I'm going to lunch now. And person B responds, okay, I will come with you. So the negative of will is I won't come with you. And the question form, will you come with me? And the reason is because this is an instant decision. It's a decision taken now about the future. It's not a plan compared with going to, where we would say, I'm going to come with you. It means I already decided. Will is used for an instant decision. Okay, going to and will have different uses. These are just two examples of future contexts. It's more complicated than that, but for now, for this video, to keep it simple, this is the main difference that you need to focus on between these two futures. Okay, that's just a quick breakdown. Once again, it's the form. We'll speak about this in future videos, and as always, please contact us for any questions, comments, feedback or lessons. We'd love your support. Please take the time to like this video, share with family and friends, and subscribe. I hope that helped. I hope it's clarified for you. Good luck with your English skills. Good luck putting this into practice. And until next time, take care.